This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little. I'm the mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and I want to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of council for December 13th, starting at 7 o'clock. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will someone move adoption of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Back. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Council, we have several items of minutes of regular meetings of council. We have the November 1st regular meeting of council, November 15th regular, November 16th public hearing, November 16th public hearing for two separate properties, and the November 23rd public hearing. Are there any errors or omissions from the minutes as presented? Okay, hearing none, will someone move adoption of the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder on the matter? Second by Councillor Curran. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay, Council. Next, we have release of closed meeting decisions. This is items 6.1 and 6.2 and 6.3 received into the record. I'm just checking with the clerk, and 6.4, sorry. Just they're read into the record. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I did that slightly out of order, but I just wanted to get some of that out of the way so that we can then return back to the public input portion of this evening's agenda. So the council sets aside up to 30 minutes at the start of every regular meeting of council for input from the public. We have a speakers list that's been presented. This is people who signed up in advance through the clerk's office, and I have quite a number of speakers. Again, we set it for a half an hour, so if people don't use their entire time, that just goes to other members of the public for more opportunity to speak. I won't cut the time short as long as there are speakers waiting to address matters at the front end of the meeting. Probably just before we do that, I will say that this meeting is being held in a hybrid format, which means all members of council, members of the public, and staff are participating in the meeting both in person and virtually. And so you can see on the cameras and screens around different participants. I will say that I believe all members of council are present and participating in the meeting. 3 of us in person here and 4 more participating virtually, but you do have a full council tonight. We will do our best to make sure that the virtual experience is as close to the in-person experience as we possibly can. So on to the public input portion of the meeting, and I'll note that it's 7:05, and our first speaker will be Dale McMahon, followed by Nigel Reedman. Dale McMahon, can you hear me?
Can hear you perfectly, Your Worship.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to members of council. I'm here this evening speaking to the proposal by Darwin Properties for redevelopment at the Maplewood site. I wanted to address this by saying that BC Housing is, and first let me introduce myself. I'm the Vice President of Operations for BC Housing. And I wanted to let council know that BC Housing is pleased to be a partner in this proposed development at 2120 Front Street, a development that, as I mentioned, has been proposed by Darwin Properties. I'd like to take a brief moment to explain to BC Housing, or to Council BC Housing's involvement with this proposed development, and also the proposed model that we're looking at using. So Darwin is proposing to replace 58 units of market housing on that site with 58 units of below market rental units through a partnership with BC Housing. The site will be developed, or the low end of market or the under market units will be developed in phase 1 of the project. And this, in doing this, this causes the least possible amount of disruption to existing tenants that are in the 58 units of market housing. I'm pleased to see that in their proposal, Darwin has agreed to engage a professional tenant consultation team to work with the tenants throughout this process, either to move them into the 58 units of below market rental, or if they do not qualify, find other alternatives. While we're still working on finalizing models and agreements for this development, BC Housing's involvement would include a 60-year lease by BC Housing for the 58 units of below market housing. BC Housing would be responsible for tenant selection, income testing, and setting income levels for qualification for housing. We would set those income levels annually. The project will target middle and moderate income households. This is an important part of BC Housing's spectrum and aligns with our mandate to develop an affordable rental unit for middle and moderate income earners. We are acutely aware of the lack of affordable housing in North Vancouver for both middle and moderate income households. With vacancies below 1%, there are significant benefits to developing purpose-built affordable housing units designed to support this missing middle income group. As stated, this is an important target population for us. Many of the tenants will come directly off our tenant registry, and this is part of BC Housing's business model moving forward. Thank you for the opportunity to address you here this evening, and we look forward to working with the District of North Vancouver as this project moves forward. Thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council.
Thank you for your comments, Dale McMahon. The next speaker I have is Nigel Reedman, followed by Craig Crawford. Nigel Reedman, can you hear me?
I can. Hopefully you can hear me as well.
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Little and council members this evening for having me and allowing me to speak. I'm also speaking in favor of the item 8.8, the mixed use development at Maplewood and Darwin. My name, as stated, is Nigel Reedman. I currently live at Maplewood Gardens in the current sort of configuration of this place. And I've been here for about 3.5 years now with my 2 kids. And I wanted to come tonight and speak about how I think that this proposal is really good. I really agree with it. The current sort of group of residents here in our community really are a bit of a community. There are lots of different ways of life, people with young families, more retired, maybe single people. And I think that this new proposal, with the different sort of availability of units from the sort of below market all the way through mixed strata, will really allow the people who are here to kind of carry on. And I think it's also really good in the kind of densification for this area of North Vancouver. And I know densification is not necessarily easy for everyone to kind of maybe wrap their heads around, but I really feel like this is a pretty good spot if we need to, and I think we do in North Van, since we're close to Ironworkers Memorial here, the Thibeault Exchange, the bus loop. So it's really easy to kind of get around via all sorts of modes of transportation. I work in Vancouver, just over the bridge, and I find it pretty easy actually to just get on my bike and ride. So it's quite good. I think this project that they have proposed kind of makes sense in my opinion here. It would sort of add to the kind of hub that Maplewood is kind of becoming, and I think is in the plans for the city or the district, sorry. And I just think that it sort of has good space for, being easy access to things like parks and schools and community centers and things like that. I just thought I'd also like to mention, I think Darwin has been really good actually with kind of keeping us as the current residents sort of abreast of what's been going on throughout the whole process. And at least for myself, I can say I felt like at no point have I been kind of in the dark. So that's been really good and really handy. It's felt like it's been a little while going, but it's it's kind of getting there. And I guess just the last thing I would mention is, one of the reasons why I think it is important to kind of move ahead with some projects like this is the reason I kind of came to Maplewood is I used to live at Mountain Village, just up on North Mountain Highway, and I moved from there because of the big fire they had, and my kids and I had to kind of escape from that. So just the sort of modernizing units, I think, is a really important thing to look ahead as we move ahead as well. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, and I'll leave it at that. Good night.
Thank you for your comments, Nigel Reedman. Next speaker is Craig Crawford, followed by Brian Bradley. Craig Crawford, can you hear me?
I can, Mayor.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Very good. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for inviting me to speak tonight, or letting me speak. By way of introduction, I'm a lifetime resident of the North Shore, and my background includes almost 30 years working for BC Housing, both in the roles of Vice President of Development Services and Vice President of Operations. I've left that role a few years ago, and now I'm consulting, affordable housing consultant with clients including municipalities, developers, and nonprofit societies. And I'm speaking regarding item 8.8, the Maplewood project. I've been involved with the project on behalf of Darwin for about 3 years now, giving them some advice on the structure of the below market component of the project. A couple of points I wanted to make. First of all, any rental is good. It's pretty unique. Not a lot of rental supply has been coming into the housing sector for the last 40 years. We have a confluence now of interest rates and other factors that are enabling the private sector to consider building rental, and it's a pretty rare opportunity. And much needed, especially on the North Shore, for sure. Specifically around this project, I want to speak to the income band. This targets the missing middle. It's a part of the income levels that isn't traditionally served by provincial and federal housing supply programs. Those programs come with steep subsidies which target a lower income band. But this missing middle, as Dale mentioned earlier, is an important one to target. It'll enable missing the middle income people that are living in or working in North Van to live there as well. It also addresses the tenant relocation issues. A lower income band could result in the existing residents not being able to move into the project. So it ticks the box of facilitating existing residents a seamless move from their existing rental into new rental stock. And what else did I want to say? This income band is getting this model of the missing middle and this targeting of this below market income band is getting the attention across the province or across the Lower Mainland. I've been instrumental in bringing this to Coquitlam, and it's been well received there. And there's a lot of interest in other municipalities across the Lower Mainland to bring this kind of below market model into the projects that they're looking at. So that's 10 seconds left. I'll give up the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Craig Crawford. The next speaker is Brian Bradley, followed by Tony Sun. Brian Bradley, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council. As you said, my name is Brian Bradley. I'm here representing Stong's Market in the Northwoods Village, and also here to speak in favor of the Darwin project at Maplewood Village. This plan was adopted in 2017, indicating that the intention to support growth in the village. This was one of the main reasons that as Stong's, we chose this location to open almost 5 years ago as the plans for development in the surrounding area. Not only were we excited by the existing neighborhood and community, who've also been very generous in their welcome, but also in part because of the new town center plan for Maplewood. As a result, the business community in the area, including Stong's, invested in Maplewood on the plan promise there would be new housing built here, bringing more customers to the area. As we recover from COVID-19, it's never been so important to be supporting local businesses. I know that many businesses are struggling with hiring and retaining quality employees. And one of the reasons for this challenge is with finding reasonably priced housing on the North Shore. Building more housing in the area close to where many jobs are available will help a number of local businesses. If we build more housing closer to where the jobs are, this will also help reduce the traffic congestion, which continues to be a growing challenge in North Vancouver. We at Stongs are eager to see things getting underway. As I said earlier, it's been over 4 years, and I encourage council to move this project along to approval. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Brian Bradley. The next speaker I have is Tony Sun, followed by George Samara. Tony Sun, can you hear me?
Yes, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tony Sun. I'm here to speak in support of the Maplewood Gardens by Darwin Properties. I own the business Reckless Shipyard, e-bikes and more at the shipyard. We offer bike rental, sales, repairs of e-bikes and any other kind of bikes. Our core value supports safe cycling and integration of e-bike friendly infrastructures, and of course the encouragement of people to cycle more through the use of e-bikes or anything on wheels. And we serve quite a few customers in the district that share our passion for sustainable living and also interested in turning to more green alternative than driving. I first heard about the Maplewood Gardens about a year ago, and I learned a bit and I really like it. I liked about the project for its emphasis on active transportation and low carbon living. And I learned that the project is designed to deliver housing that is complemented by increased transit services, safe pedestrian and also a lot of cycling connections to amenities and business in the neighborhood. So from a cycling standpoint, I think this project will vastly improve connectivity in the area. I was quite excited to learn that the project brings in almost 1,000 secure bike parking stalls and a completely new protected bike lane along Riverside Drive. This aspect will encourage more residents and people in the community to choose for their bikes before a car. So maybe a small steps like the bike racks and bike lanes, but when they're implemented more broadly in the community, I believe they will make a big difference in the long run. So I think it's a great project, and I'd like to see that move forward in the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony Sun. The next speaker is George Samara, followed by Mitch Stuckey. George Samara is here in person. Welcome.
Your Worship, Council. Okay, my name is George Samara, and I own 2 businesses in the Maplewood area. First one I opened in 1988, second one 16 years ago, and I also live in the area, so I don't have to commute. And I'm familiar kind of with the Darwin project, and I like it, everything, except I got two items which I would like to express here. I don't want to be too tall buildings because I don't think it's good for the area. If it's like I don't know, 6 or 8 floor, whatever, but that's the one thing. And the second thing, which is important in my view, is make sure for those developers, make sure we have enough parking spot there. Because for me, I see it's already how it's hard to find it for my customers to find the parking. Yeah? And I think hope people will be not using cars in the future, but in the area we live, it's a lot of Hills and Riverside Drive. I live there behind the corner, and the Blue Ridge and everything. I don't think they ever use the buses and everything there. So my really important point is to have enough parking. Yeah, I like the development. I'm familiar with that, and I hope they will install some art in the not only buildings. I like the work they do, so I hope they will do it too. But employ the local artists, native artists, and others as well, and not only building and functions, but also have some art. You know, some little small plazas and park for the people to enjoy. So that's basically what I have in my mind. I don't know what else can I say, and I support the project. I support it, and I hope it's gonna. I like the social aspect of the Darwin work because I know the Darwin company for a long time, and I know them, but I watch their work, and I think they are good people in my view. You know, so that's all what I have to say today. You know, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you,
And
George.
one thing for Mr. Bond, I would like to thank you for getting the memo about dress code. You know, very much.
Good match. I'm overdressed with a tie, I think is what I heard. Okay, thank you, George Samara, for your comments. The next speaker is Mitch Stuckey, followed by Phil Chapman. Mitch Stuckey, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you so much. Hello, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Mitchell Stuckey, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a settler living on the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish people in the so-called District of North Vancouver. I feel so grateful to be able to live here with my wife and raise my 2 young children. I'm speaking today in support of item 8.2, endorsing the call for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, and to express my hope that the council does formally endorse it. For years, the science has been clear that we need to rapidly transition off of fossil fuels if we want to have a chance at a safe climate, something that the fossil fuel companies themselves understood over 40 years ago. This year, BC has felt some of the impacts of the climate crisis. Hundreds of people were killed in the record-shattering heat dome, devastating deadly fires, and the province choked by smoke that is now a consistent event rather than an outlier in the summers. The first tornado I've ever heard of near Vancouver, and then the fatal mudslides and flooding that has destroyed so much. It could not be more apparent that bold and swift action is required to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change for those around the world and for our community right here. We cannot look around the world and point fingers to bigger polluters and say, well, we're not as bad as them. We need to be doing the best possible job we can to rapidly transition our lives off of dirty energy. And instead, we still have the provincial BC government sending in RCMP to Indigenous territory to violently arrest, terrorize, and continue a despicable colonial legacy in the name of resource extraction. We need municipalities like the District of North Vancouver to stand up and say enough is enough. We need to do the right, smart, and safe thing. We need to change everything if we want a chance to stay under 1.5 degrees, and we can do this while we create a better, healthier, safer, more equitable society. Please endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty and add our community to the growing list of cities that are standing together to push for rapid, meaningful, and equitable transition off of fossil fuels. Climate change is the biggest threat our species has ever faced, and it will take a massive, coordinated effort and enshrining bold strategy into law in order to curb emissions and keep us from cataclysmic warming. Thank you all so much for the work that you're doing to address the climate crisis, and I just want to let you know that myself and this community wants and needs bold climate action, and you have our support. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, Mitch Stuckey. The next speaker I have is Phil Chapman, followed by Don Peters. Phil Chapman, can you hear me? That confirmation, is Mr. Chapman on the call? Oh, okay. Mr. Chapman, you may be able to hear me. To unmute yourself on the phone system, you have to press *6.
Thank you.
There you go.
There we are. Yeah,
have,
I can hear you now. Thank you. Mr. Mayor and members of council, I'm speaking in support of moving Maplewood Gardens application to public hearing. I just wanted to say that when I started work in the district planning department in 1992, all the residents in Maplewood wanted was really to have a village, something like Whistler or Edgemont Village. And when I left the planning department 25 years later, the residents were still waiting for their village to be built. And after a further 5 years of waiting, they may get a chance if you send this application to public hearing. The Maplewood Gardens projects will provide an essential piece of the approved Maplewood Village Center plan and will provide replacement housing for the current residents of the property. I think it is definitely worthy of further public discussion and your favorable consideration in the future. Thanks very much for hearing me tonight, and I wish you well in your meeting. I notice you've got many housing items on the agenda for tonight. Thanks again.
Thank you, Phil Chapman. The next speaker I have is Don Peters, followed by Judith Brooks. Don Peters, can you hear me? I believe Don Peters is also by phone. *6 to unmute yourself, Don Peters.
That's Don Peters here, Your Worship. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. My name is Don Peters. I live at 678 West Queens in the district of North Vancouver. And like the previous speaker, you know, I note that we've been waiting for this development in Maplewood for a long time. I had a whole bunch of sort of granular things to say to you tonight. You've heard most of them about what a great neighborhood this is in the making, and we support this going forward to public hearing unanimously. We see housing of all kinds, notably the 58 non-market replacement rentals with no tenant relocation disturbance, really, which is just about as good as it gets. Lots of mid-income rentals and, you know, other amenities, good tenant plan, all kinds of parking, and we really see this as a neighborhood waiting to be built. It's been a long time in the pipeline, and I note that it will contribute significantly to the district's 2030 housing goals. We've got, I think, 60,000 people coming to the North Shore the next 5 years or something like that. And this 500 plus new units, close to transit, close to commercial services. We've heard speakers talk about the positive effect on bridge and road congestion. We've got great partners in BC Housing, Quadrille, and others, and this is really right up our OCP alley, if you would forgive me that. And so, as I said, it's another great neighborhood in the making, and I know that's what the residents want. We've heard all of the speakers tonight in favor of this project going forward to public hearing, and I want you to know that Jack feels unanimous in the same way, all 26 members of us, and we wish you well in your deliberations. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Good luck tonight.
Thank you for your comments, Don Peters. The next speaker I have is Judith Brooks, followed by Peter Teven. Judith Brooks, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. My name is Judith Brooks, and I live in Lynn Valley in the district of North Vancouver. I'll be speaking very briefly on 2 agenda items. Agenda 8.2 on the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. I have written to Council on this topic, and now just a short mention of my support to Council endorsing the call for this treaty. A reminder that West Van Council endorsed the treaty call on November 22nd, and Bonn became the first German city to endorse the call on December the 10th. And this evening, New Westminster Council is also considering this treaty. My additional comments are on agenda item 8.8, the Maplewood project, which, as we know, is going to include both market strata units and market rental and non-market rental. So I wanted to mention my thanks for a June 2021 meeting with company representatives. We heard of the plans of Maplewood Gardens planned to be constructed in 2 phases, with the below market rental being completed first so that existing tenants could move directly from old homes to new, resulting in 0 displacement. So I hope that continues to be the plan. Also want to express my thanks that the project developers have confirmed there will be no gas line installation at this project. It will be 100% electric and fossil fuel free. Myself and others in the Force of Nature group are looking forward to further discussions with Darwin and their representatives on potential use of low carbon cement and other low carbon building approaches. So I support this project going forward, and thank you for this opportunity to chat.
Thank you for your comments, Judith Brooks. The next speaker I have is Peter Teven here in person, followed by Nathan Davidovitz.
Thank you, Your Worship. Peter Teven, 1900 block in the Mirror Crescent. I wrote to you, Council, earlier today on several of the agenda items. It's a pretty large agenda to get through. I didn't manage to get through all of it, but I do want to comment on the agenda item that is the transfer of reserve funds. As you recall, this is something I've been watching for quite a long time. Interested in making sure that the use and accumulation of reserve funds are understandable to the average citizen and that they make sense. And I do want to caution in the way that the report was prepared, it was difficult to understand exactly what was going on. On the one hand, it talked about transfer of certain reserve funds. On the other, there's a copy of Mr. Daniluk's report saying that with respect to operating and risk management reserve funds, they did not recommend that they were passed into bylaw. And I have to say I got really confused about which reserve funds were we talking about here. So I would really counsel clarity again on the subject of reserve funds. Have a table. Here's all the reserve funds. These ones are risk management. These ones are capital. These ones are operating. These are the ones we're talking about here, because it's very easy to get confused. And then, of course, when we have first, second, and third reading, on the one hand, we're saying it's a housekeeping issue, but because it's first, second, and third reading, that means it's entirely possible to have completely new information in there. And then the work is on to try to figure out what's new, if anything. So it is, it's very unsettling when we have something that's run through first, second, and third reading. I'd just like to move for a second onto the housing needs report. And you all know that the subject of development, responsible development, the housing continuum, and our OCP is very, very important to me. And I want to say that I really see these things working together. What I see is a situation where the housing needs report will provide the right-hand column for the housing continuum, and that council can then manage the housing continuum along with public input. So I think it's really important, but the flaws that I see in the methodology of the housing needs report are this, that it seems to be trend-driven and stakeholder-driven, but it's not really a needs report. It's a housing projections report, a housing trends report, but at no point have we gone to the people looking for housing and said, what do you need? I think that's really key. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've gone full time, but I would really, we do have one speaker still signed up. So with council's indulgence, I will ask for the last speaker on the list to go ahead. Nathan Davidovitz, you might be a call-in.
Hello?
Oh,
do you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm calling about the half-page ad that was in the North Shore News on October the 27th by the Amalgamated Transit Union. I contacted the union and they told me that no politicians or staff member or anybody contacted them. We're going to get lots of transit cutbacks. We already had some in 2020 and 2021, and now we're going to get some more in 2022. starting January the 3rd. There's a whole list of bus routes that are going to be cut, I think about 30, 36, 37 in the Lower Mainland, and some of them are on the North Shore. And that's why the union put the ad in the paper, but nobody seems to care. Nobody's contact them. You know, I mean, your staff is not reporting you the truth of what's happening to our transit system. And I wouldn't blame them because they don't have much knowledge anyhow. And TransLink is hiding the truth. So what do we need? We need an independent transit commissioner like we had till 2014. There was an independent one who will give you independent advice. And that's what this council should ask for from the provincial government. Otherwise, you'll never get the right answers. So, you know, that's, and you know how the mayor council work, and that doesn't work properly because there is no independent advice. And so whatever you could do to help, you know, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Nathan Davidovitz. Okay, council, thank you for the indulgence to get an extra speaker in. They had waited a while, so that's great. Council, we have a very full agenda tonight. It's a large package, over 650 pages in total. And if we just went through the agenda, no doubt we'd have important discussions about many things that we already have a consensus on. A number of the items are just back for adoption. A number of items have already had full discussions with the council. And I'd rather focus our time on items that I think that there's a more substantive discussion needs to take place. I'm going to be proposing a rather aggressive consent agenda. And I just want to read it out as I go so that everybody's aware of what is proposed in this. I'm proposing a consent agenda of 8.1, district contributions to affordable housing. 8.2, endorsing the call for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. 8.3, financial plan approval bylaw. 8.4, bylaws 8535, 8536, 8537, waterworks, sewer, and solid waste bylaw. Again, those are for adoption. Bylaw 8534, fees and charges, again for adoption. The 2020 council meeting schedule for approval. That's 8.6. Then skipping to 8.9, transfer of reserve funds. It's a matter that we've discussed before as a council. 8.10, housing needs report. And that would leave the bulk of the meeting for 8.7, 8.8, and 8.11, all which I expect to have a full discussion about. Members of council, would anybody like to withdraw any of the 8 items that I've proposed for the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll be moving it. Will somebody second the consent agenda? Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. So to the members of the public present or online, if you were here for 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, 8.6, 8.9, or 8.10, those matters have just been passed. And so we will spend the bulk of the rest of the time on 8.7, 8.8, and 8.11. So the first of those 3 matters, item 8.7, this is a matter called the Riverside Site, bylaws 8538, 8539, rezoning and development cost charges waivers bylaw for social housing development at the Riverside Site. This matter is returning from a public hearing, and so it is up for second and third at this time. And just wondering if staff can just make a quick comment before we get into council discussion. I don't know, Mr. Hartford, did you have a comment to make?
Your worship, staff have no comments on the item from a closed public hearing.
Okay, council, what's your pleasure? Okay, I don't see a hand, so I'm going to move. I'm going to move the recommendation that District of North Vancouver rezoning bylaw 1414 is given second and third readings. and that District North Vancouver zoning bylaw 1414, bylaw 8538 is adopted, and that the Riverside Drive development cost charges waiver bylaw 8539/2021 is given second and third readings. Is there a seconder on the matter? Councillor Hanson has seconded the matter. My own comments returning from the public hearing. This council has made very significant commitments to be able to produce affordable housing in our community and wherever District of North Vancouver land is involved. And I believe that this area is a prime example where we can pre-zone property so that the district has to suffer the slings and arrows of going through the massing and access and egress and form questions. And then the matter is sent to a, once it's adopted by council, once it's rezoned by council, then the partner is brought in to carry the ball over the finish line on a project. And so I think this is a fantastic candidate for Metro Vancouver Housing's projects. I'd really like to see a Metro Vancouver project here in the District of North Vancouver. And I think that this neighborhood would be a great space for it. There are some challenges. I think we are approving a rezoning of up to 6 stories. I still have some apprehension about being full 6 stories right on the frontage to Riverside. But that can be a matter for discussion going forward. The council doesn't have to pass that, but I do think it's a critically important piece of property for us to commit to social and affordable housing going forward. And so I will be supportive of the motion. Councillor Hanson, your comments.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm pleased to state that I will be voting in favor of the rezoning of this site to accommodate its development as social and affordable housing. I hope that the site will be found suitable by Metro Vancouver and that we will see our first Metro Vancouver housing affordable rental development in the district. Should Metro Vancouver ultimately decide not to take advantage of the site, I look forward to seeing this site developed as affordable housing with another partner. Decisions of this type always include a balancing of competing interests. I have listened to and heard those who say that other locations would be more suitable for affordable housing. I've also heard those who express concern for the environment in this area and the desire to keep these lands forested and natural. However, I believe that the benefit to the district of securing 60 to 90 rental units for persons and families with incomes potentially in the range of $30,000 to $85,000 a year weighs in favor of our approving this rezoning. I've also considered the project's proximity to the Connexus chlorine plant, and I'm grateful to those who raised the issue. And I was pleased to see that Connexus has plans to terminate production of chlorine on this site by July 1st, 2030, which would be coming up 8 years from now. Finally, as to issues such as the flood risk, hydrogeology, and tree removal, I believe that such issues can be addressed through careful development and not to be a reason to reject the rezoning. I'd like to thank everyone who expressed their views on public input concerning this matter, and I look forward to the district working with Metro Vancouver to secure affordable housing on this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. I did just want to make one slight change there. In your comments, you said that the plan is to end chlorine production on the property. Just to be very clear, the current plan is to end the production of liquid chlorine on the property. And just to make the distinction that I think they still intend to produce chlorine products, it just wouldn't be in a liquid form. Thank you. Okay, next speaker I see is Councillor Curran. Your comments?
I'll be brief because we have had opportunities to discuss this, and I think Councillor Hanson and Mayor Little, you've both summarized many of the points that have been brought up. I think that land use, or a more thoughtful way to look at it that I learned from an Indigenous elder was land relationship planning, and creating these complete compact communities is one of the best ways that we can address multiple challenges that we face. And I know that this will be coming further, but we have heard in that housing needs report from people with disabilities in our community that still feel very left out of some of the affordable housing discussions. And so I will, we can continue to advocate for as many of the units to be secured that are fully accessible. So I do look forward to seeing this move along, and I thank everyone for their efforts.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curran. Councillor Beck, your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to everyone for their comments so far. My comments are brief as well. We need this type of affordable housing in many parts of our community, but especially in a part that's a town center that has close proximity to frequent transit that will not only provide housing, but some benefit for a community nonprofit as well, potentially. But hopefully Metro Vancouver does select us for this project. I think this does put us in a favorable position. We'll also benefit from the upgrades to active transportation throughout that area. We know that Riverside Drive needs those upgrades badly. But overall, I'd really like to see a Metro Vancouver housing project here. I think it's something we could all be very proud of. So happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I'm Wells, and I also am in support of this proposal. I think one thing to note here is the timeline of this proposal, and it really is indicative of how long it actually takes for affordable housing projects or social housing projects to move through the pipeline. This project was first proposed and by the previous council in 2018 when an MOU with BC Housing was signed for a number of sites around the district, this being one of them. I think that also lends positively towards the district approving this rezoning, because not only are we seeking Metro Vancouver as a partner, but we also have a memorandum of understanding with BC Housing about this site as well. So there are, as we know, multiple ways to access funding for affordable housing to provide that needed subsidy, especially for people of low or moderate incomes. And we have two opportunities at least waiting for this site. And those opportunities could be combined should Metro Vancouver choose this site as well. So I think those all speak in favor of this site. And like Councillor Hanson, I did hear during the public hearing some concerns or the opinion expressed that there might be other better sites. And I think one thing that we need to think about when we're thinking about a crisis, a housing crisis, a climate crisis, is it's not but or, it's and. We have this site and we have other sites. And we really need to be thinking of that in the big pictures, that we need to be doing more and we need to be scaling up our actions in order to meet the needs that are presented by these multiple crises. So we have another report at the end of the agenda about that. And so I think this project and more is really the message that we should be putting out to the community to address these multiple crises that we have. So I am in full support.
Thank you, Councillor. Next speaker I have is Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I think we can only look at ourselves in the past, look at decisions from around the region, provincial decisions, federal government decisions, and really we need to take responsibility ourselves for the housing crisis. This area was at one time one of the most affordable areas to live in, and it is just it's on a target to be again one of the most expensive places. The parameters for Maplewood have changed greatly with the transfer of lands to another level of government, and where once municipal councils, including this one, were rezoning industrial land to residential and displacing hundreds of families in existing affordable rental, we were to somehow make up those losses somewhere else. And the challenges of that are great. I remain completely in support of Metro Vancouver's housing concept. And I know for many of you, this was a box that needed to be checked based on when you ran in the election. I do, however, find it astounding, absolutely astounding, that when we have two other completely viable sites in town centers, close to schools, infrastructure already put in and built, in areas that are not treed, that are already previously developed with hardscape surfaces, we choose a forest on a floodplain to develop. I think the cost for Metro Vancouver to build this project is going to far exceed any of their other previous projects. And I do believe that they will exceed any of the applications that other municipalities have brought forward. We have a site in a town center close to a public elementary school with services that are far more supportive and affordable than we do at this site. The school across the street from this site is a special school. It's a private school and it's for special needs children. The local shopping is not necessarily the most affordable. Any of the local schools that are anywhere close to this are you required to drive to them. I lived in this area and I know it very well. So you know, just to top it off, at the beginning of this term, we were so reluctant to even look at a single family treed lot for consideration of social housing. And now we are taking several lots that are zoned park, recreation, and open space in the district's community plan. I think this actually is a move to trigger further extensive development in this area. And I think what we need to be concentrating on is jobs and expanding business in this area and making up for the loss of industrial land that was rezoned year after year after year to make way for expensive luxury condos. So although I'm very supportive of affordable housing, I'm supportive of Metro's housing concept, I cannot support this type of housing on this lot. Those other two lots in Lower Lynn, no problem. In fact, double the density. Double it. Double the density in a town center for affordable social housing. And I will be the first one to put up my hand.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Murray. Next speaker is Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. As has already been said, we've discussed this property before, and I think Councillor Murray has said most of the things I was going to say. Right from the get-go, I've always been concerned about the infrastructure along Riverside. Riverside, it connects the Seymour Parkway with Old Dollarton, and there's a lot of heavy construction type vehicles that go along there. And we just recently, there's no sidewalks on Riverside right now, and we just recently put up some delineators to try to protect bicycle riders. It's still a very narrow road, and I'm not sure if I'd even attempt to ride my bike on that road, even with the delineators. I am also concerned that there's, as Councillor Murray said, we started out not taking trees down, and now some councillors are saying, well, it's okay to take the trees down. We're going to have a green roof that will make up for the trees. I don't think that's the case. I don't think you can make up for taking down an entire lots of trees. Also, the total amount, including the land and all the fees that the district is giving up for this particular land, and it doesn't include the construction costs, which won't be ours, or the servicing and things like that. It's the district's giving or putting up, offering $3,269 and 806, sorry, said that wrong, $3,269,806. That's a whopping amount of money, and I'm all for giving that up for supportive income, supportive housing, and getting people of lower incomes, lower to middle incomes, to be able to have a roof over their house. However, I don't think this is the site. This is not in the center of a town, in the center of a town center. It's also recently, TransLink has recently cut one of the bus routes that connect the town center, Maplewood Town Center, to Seymour Parkway. So rather than going forward, TransLink seems to be going backwards a little bit here. There's also going to be the square footage I'm a bit concerned about, given what's in the area, and I think it will set a precedence for what may happen to the rest of the area around there. And this used to be our light industrial type area, and we need housing, no doubt, and I'm for it. I've been for every supportive, and I'm for rental, and I'm even more for non-market rental. But we're displacing businesses, be light industrial, which are pretty, they're usually pretty good paying jobs, and we're displacing the light industrial. So we're going to end up with very little to no light industrial lands in the district of North Vancouver. And what that means going forward is, if you want to install if you want landscaping done or any kind of trades work, it will probably have to come across the bridge. And right now, trades don't want to come across the bridge. They will actually say no to a job over here because they don't want to fight the traffic. So I'm concerned about us losing the light industrial. I'm also concerned about the chemical plant and the floodplain, and the uncertainty of exactly what's going to happen on the lands that are in the ALR process right now with the Tsleil-Waututh. I don't know exactly what that development's going to be, but that's going to bring a lot more traffic too. And the final thing is, much like Lynn Valley where I live, Lynn Valley has two ways out. That's it, two ways. We have, you can wind maybe, but the main two ways out are Mountain Highway and Lynn Valley Road. If there's a disaster at the top of either of those roads, you're going to have a lot of people traveling down the two exits. Seymour faces the same problem, Seymour area and Deep Cove, because you've only got two ways out there. You've got a very old road, Dollarton Highway, and you have Seymour Parkway, which is much like a racetrack, like Lynn Valley's roads are. So they have the same issue. If there's an emergency, how do they get out? So I'm not in favor of necessarily putting a whole bunch more parking and cars in that area. And as much as we want to move people, some people want to move people out of cars, it's not going to happen overnight. And so I just think we have to look at a bigger picture here. Stop looking at just silos of, well, we'll build this here and we'll build this here and we'll build this here. And we need to look at the entire effect that will have on a neighborhood and on the district of North Vancouver. We also need to be providing more infrastructure in the way of schools, hospital expansions continuously. So we need to think about all of those things. So I'm not in favor of this development. I'm in favor of a metro development. I'm in favor of supportive rental and affordable housing tied to income, but I'm not in favor of it being in this particular location.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Forbes. The next speaker is Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to counter the point being made that there's other more suitable sites. And I think this is a good site and I support it, but I also think those other sites are good sites as well. And I think that if we're really serious about affordable housing, we need to address this with the sense of urgency that it deserves. We have a shortage of housing, and I sit as the council rep on the North Vancouver Chamber of Commerce, and it's the #1 concern that business owners are saying is that our staff, we can't recruit and retain staff because they can't afford to live here. So let's look at those sites as well, and let's see what we can do. And in terms of trees, I don't want to think that by supporting this particular site, I'm against, trees and don't want to protect the trees. Of course, that's why I love this community, and I think it's one of the greatest features is our natural landscape and all of the wonderful trees that we have. But we don't have a shortage of trees. We have a shortage of affordable housing for people, and I think this is the opportunity to do that. So I think this is a great site, but I also think those are great sites as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Back. The next speaker is Councillor Curran.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just be brief. I think it's important to really understand the complexity and the interconnected crises that we face and how those interact. And there is no question that any loss of nature is not something that we would set out to do. So the only reason that I brought up the biodiversity piece and green roofs and looking at green infrastructure and replanting that are trees that are that do the best job that they can do for mental health, for our changing climate, to improve biodiversity is because we need solutions to complex problems. And this is a solution to a complex problem. When we started the term, the majority of council supported taking down a similar amount of trees for a temporary use permit for Dykoff. And at the time, I did not support that. And through science and data, we looked at this space, and it's not ideal. And I think that that's the point, is that it's complex. And I know the need is so great in this community and in every community. And this is a place that does provide opportunities to look at 21st century mobility options. And they're never easy decisions, but at the end of the day, I can't wait to see people happily make their home here.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the chlorine. So my comments with respect to the chlorine came from the answer on the from staff. And you're absolutely correct. It says, it talks about the termination of the liquid chlorine. So that was there. I mean, I have no knowledge of the plans beyond 2030, except my understanding is that the greatest danger would come from the manufacture of the liquid chlorine,
yes,
not the alternative. So yes. I just wanted to cover that off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Muir, your comments?
Thank you, Meryl. Oh. Sorry, my iPad doesn't work very well and I lose power really quickly, so that's why my camera's off. So my apologies. I just wanted to sort of, get council to reflect on the entire area of Maplewood. Where this site is located is in the back portion of the rear yards of what was at one time the very developed area of Dollarton Highway. It used to be Dollarton Highway. You used to drive right through this area when you were leaving the Cove, probably before most of you. I think Councillor Hanson, Mayor Little, and Councillor Forbes would remember driving through where our fire rescue site is, along that road. That was the main road, because everything else below it was a forest. And then that was rezoned and developed into business park. But if we are to look at where this lot for this particular application is situated, it is going to be a contiguous line all the way in the rear of those properties, taking down far more trees than exist on the road. Those lots, Councillor Curran, were lots for houses. And there were some small businesses in there. There used to be a farm in there. In fact, the roof is still, you could still see it. The roof is under a bunch of blackberry bushes. This is just going to densify an area further into what's left of that green belt and that wildlife corridor. And then once we get to Maplewood North, you know, there's a future in regards to development in that area. It's 40 acres. It's a large area, and you know, there will be development that will be happening on that. So I have to ask myself, you know, what's going to be left? You know, we need to sort of preserve what we've got and think outside the box and look at what we need and what are suitable areas for it without having to take down parks and forests. I mean, I never thought I would ever see this council. I've seen other councils do it, but I never thought I'd see this one. This is one of the greenest ones we've had. And we're clear cutting forests. We have 2 brownfield sites right now that are district owned, right now in town centers. One's right next to an elementary school.
Councillor, I'm gonna have to.
And we don't seem to feel like that's more appropriate than tearing down a forest for this application. So I remain opposed.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Okay, Council, I see no further speakers at this time, and so I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with Councillors Murray and Forbes opposed. Thank you very much, Council. The next item up for consideration is item 8.8. This item has 2 speakers signed up to speak to it, and we'll get their comments first. And so the first speaker is Jason Turcotte, followed by Corey Cost. Jason Turcotte is here in person, so I'll have you come up to the table and make your comments. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the introduction. For those that don't know me, I am Jason Turcotte, President of Darwin Properties. Joining me in Council chambers are my colleague and Senior Development Manager with Darwin, Chris Wilkinson, as well as David Roper, Edward's Vice President of Development, who are our partner on this project, and Alan Sepinen, Principal of RWA Architects. Reaching this milestone has been nearly 5 years in the making, and needless to say, it's a very important night for all of us as stakeholders in this significant project. A lot happens in 5 years, and perhaps never before in any 5-year period has the housing sector experienced more change and challenge than it has in these past 5. Not surprisingly then, there has been an extraordinary effort put into the proposal that you are considering tonight, which is truly the culmination of staff and council's policy work over the period of time we've been in this rezoning. Work on housing needs, transportation planning, prioritizing development in town centers near significant transit hubs, and of course, sustainability. In a moment, Mr. Zhang will lead you through the details of how this proposal checks many boxes in each of these categories, including non-market housing, zero tenant displacement, mass timber construction, and a fossil fuel-free community, just to name a few. In my 20-year career in real estate development, I can objectively say that I cannot recall any private sector development application that achieves so many policy objectives at one time. We have the opportunity to set a premier example of how to appropriately densify existing multifamily properties that have reached the end of their economic life. We have no more land. Our growth will increasingly come from redevelopment and densification of properties just like this one. In a few minutes, with all of this information in hand, you will have the opportunity to refer this proposal to a public hearing. We are looking forward to putting 5 years of our collective hard work on display, work that includes research on innovative building practices, partnerships with BC Housing, continued dialogue and engagement with our existing tenants, liaising with local business owners and operators, and last but certainly not least, the work by you as policymakers and by district staff in the engineering, transportation, and community and development planning departments. We are excited about the prospect of receiving feedback from fellow residents and members of the local business community at a public hearing early next year. Our team is available to field any questions that you may have, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm acting Mayor. I think Mayor or Councillor back.
I believe I am until 14th. I could be wrong.
Oh, I thought I was asked to do it earlier. Okay, are we confused? Do we have a?
Yeah, we've had a message from the mayor who's just had to step away for a second. So thank you very much, Mr. Turcotte. And I believe we have a member of the public here to speak next, Mr. Corey Cost. Corey, are you with us on the line?
Yes, acting worship. I am on the line. I hope you can see me.
I can see you. Hopefully you can be seen in the chamber and heard. Please go ahead. Thanks.
Okay. I will put up a slide so you can follow what I have to say. I think this is the one. I hope you can see that.
Yes, we can. At least I can on my screen. Yeah.
Okay, great. My name is Corey Cost. I live near Edgemont Village, so completely out of this area of consideration tonight. But and I am at 2851 Colwood Drive. I would put to you some considerations before you tonight, before you decide on going to a public hearing. First of all, I think I'm unable to determine anywhere the dollar value of the waived CACs. And I refer you to page 26 of the staff report. There are going to be 80 below market units, but they're located just south of the original 10 to the minus 6 risk counter. See page 25 of that report, which shows it to be moved south, apparently for convenience. I will show you the slide here. This is where the location of the below market units are being proposed. And this is where the original TCP 10 to the minus 6 counter went. And for convenience, I'm not sure if such a convenience is justified. It was put on Front Road to the south, closer to the plant. I have concerns about having done that. I also recommend Council read the chlorine pamphlet 74, edition 7, which came out not that long ago. It's very hard to get. You have to sign your life away practically. And I refer to that below. There's the pamphlet, gives guidance on chlorine releases. The land dedication of 17,000 square feet, which is only a fraction of a hectare, falls really very short of the 4 acres that this proposal needs in order to pay its own way. And I refer to the Parks and Open Space Strategic Plan on this, and specifically the table below, which tells you how much acreage you need per 1,000 people, which you have about 1,000 people here. On November the 12th, 2019, the public information meeting showed it allocated 23,500 square feet for industrial space. Now it proposes only about 11,000 square feet, but it's commercial space. That's odd. So between that time, 2 years ago, and now, things have changed. I believe this development is also on a floodplain. So I've included enough reference here for you to go to this material, which I'll email to council shortly after this talk is given. And I hope you will consider these matters. If not, I will see you at the public hearing for really much more details, which will take a considerable amount of time to go through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Cost. Sorry, I had to step out of the room for just a minute. Thank you, Councillor Back, for filling in. The next speaker will be our staff presentation, and I believe I'm looking to Mr. Hartford. Oh, Kevin Zhang is here. Mr. Hartford?
Your Worship, that's correct. We have a presentation from Mr. Kevin Zhang on behalf of the Planning Department.
Welcome.
Thank you, Worship. Let me just share my screen here. Can you all see my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council and the public. My name is Kevin Zhang, and I am a development planner with the district. This presentation will provide a brief overview of the proposal at 2131 Old Dalton Road, 2102 Front Street, and 2120 Front Street. Darwin Properties has applied to rezone the subject properties to permit the construction of a mixed-use development, which includes 80 non-market rental units, 99 market rental units, and 374 strata units, for a total of 553 residential units. The proposal also includes ground floor commercial space and live-work units. Implementation of the project requires council consideration of rezoning bylaw 8477 and 3 housing agreement bylaws 8478, 8540, and 8541. For context, this site is located within the Maplewood Village Center, just east of the Second Narrows Bridge, as indicated by the star. Taking a closer look, we see that the site, highlighted in red, is bound by Old Dalton Road, Riverside Drive, Front Street, and Seymour River Place. The site is approximately 4.39 acres in size and consists of 3 properties. The northern property, highlighted in orange, is currently Maplewood Gardens, an existing development consisting of 58 market rental apartments and townhouses. And the southern 2 properties, highlighted in blue, contain light industrial buildings. The official community plan designates the site as a mix of commercial residential mixed-use level 2 and residential level 6 medium density apartment, both of which envision densities of up to 2.5 FSR. The existing zoning for the site is multifamily residential zone 3 for the northern parcel, again in orange, and light industrial zone for the southern 2 parcels in blue. The entire site is proposed to be changed to a new comprehensive development zone 137, tailored specifically to this project, and will permit a total density of 2.5 FSR, reflecting the density set out in the OCP designations mentioned previously. The site is also within 3 development permit areas. First, form and character of commercial and mixed and multifamily buildings. Second, energy water conservation and greenhouse gas emission reductions. And lastly, protection of the development from hazardous conditions, creek hazard. The Maplewood plan shows the general concept for this block, with the subject site highlighted in blue. The plan envisions a cluster of mixed-use buildings on the site, with commercial uses on the western frontage, commercial or live-work uses on the north and southern frontages, and residential throughout. The plan also identifies an extension of Seymour River Place from Old Dalton Road to Front Street, highlighted by the black arrow. Also pivotal to this plan is a central open area and north-south and east-west connections that are public connections through the site, as shown by the green arrows, the orange arrows. Moving on to the proposed site plan, we see that it's divided into 5 areas, with 1 building in each area. This image shows us the general layout of the site, which is a ring of buildings around the perimeter, surrounding a publicly accessible courtyard in the center. All buildings are 6 stories in height, except for the building in area 5, northwest corner of the site, which is 12 stories. The space between the buildings are designed to be publicly accessible paths that crisscross the site. Delving a little deeper into the site plan, I'll provide a brief description of each area, starting with area 1 in the southwest corner of the site and moving counterclockwise. In area 1, which I've highlighted in blue, contains a 6-story commercial and residential mixed-use building with 139 strata units, 5,100 square feet of commercial space at grade fronting onto Seymour River Place, and live work units fronting onto Front Street. Area 2 contains a 6-story residential building with 80 non-market rental units. Area 3 contains a 6-story residential building with 99 market rental units. Area 4 contains a 6-story residential building with 97 strata units. And finally, Area 5 contains the central courtyard and a 12-story commercial and residential mixed-use building with 138 strata units, 5,600 square feet of commercial space fronting onto Seymour River Place. And this building is proposed to be constructed with mass timber technology. Buildings 1, 3, and 5 will have common rooftop patio access. There are 2 parking access ramps proposed on Seymour River Place and Front Street. Key public features, which will be labeled in yellow, include 2 plazas on the north and south end of Seymour River Place, adjacent to the commercial spaces, a publicly accessible courtyard, and a new rapid transit stop on Old Dalton Road to the north. On this slide, I want to draw your attention to the open space network, as permeability through the site for pedestrian and cyclists is a key component of the Maplewood plan. These proposed public features, such as the public plazas and the courtyards, are all connected by a network of public paths, as shown by the orange arrows. In addition to these paths, I want to point out that 2 buildings have breezeways through their ground floor, shown via the red arrows, to further improve public access to and through the site. Moving on to the housing proposal, with all 5 buildings combined, the project has a total of 553 residential units, with 80 being non-market rental, 99 being market rental, and 374 being strata units. Approximately half of the units are 2 bedrooms or greater. A more detailed breakdown of the 80 non-market rental units will be provided on the following slide. As mentioned previously, there are currently 58 rental units within the existing Maplewood Gardens development. The applicant proposes to replace these 58 rental units and provide an additional 22 units in this project. All 80 of the non-market rental units exist in the building in area 2, which is pictured on this slide. And this building is proposed to be built within the first phase of the project. The entire building is proposed to be operated by BC Housing under 2 different housing programs. The first 58 of the 80 units are proposed to be operated by the BC Housing Management Commission and targeted towards low and moderate income households as defined by BC Housing. And BC Housing will adjust the starting rents annually to remain 25% below market rents. 22 of the 80 units are proposed to be operated under BC Housing's Provincial Rental Housing Supply Program and is targeted towards middle income households, again as defined by BC Housing. The proposed rents will be market rates. However, BC Housing will be conducting income testing to ensure that these units are rented to suitable tenants. The development is proposed to be constructed in 2 phases, with the first phase, highlighted here, to the south, and the second phase to the north. The overall intent of the phasing strategy is to minimize displacement of existing residential tenants. The applicant proposes to construct the 80-unit non-market rental building highlighted in yellow here in phase 1, along with the 139-unit mixed-use strata building just to the west of it. And this is proposed to be completed prior to the demolition of the existing Maplewood Gardens buildings in phase 2. This image on this slide shows a snapshot in time where phase 1 is complete prior to the commencement of phase 2. And at this point in the future, the existing tenants will have the opportunity to move into the newly built rental units or purchase a newly built strata unit should they wish to do so. The tenant assistance package proposed includes the following provisions. Rent has been frozen since 2016 for existing tenants. A right of first refusal will be provided to the existing tenants for both the non-market rental units or purchasing a strata unit. Notification will be provided 3 months in advance of the completion of the new non-market rental building. The first month will be provided for free in the new rental building. And lastly, a professional tenant liaison has been working with the tenants since 2016. Turning to sustainability aspects of this application, the proposal does not include fossil fuel use for space heating, water heating, or cooking. The proposal will also meet BC Energy Step Code requirements as per the district's construction bylaw. The 12-story building in Area 5, pictured here on the right, is proposed to be a mass timber construction. The applicant has indicated that on average, a wood frame construction of this type will have approximately 25 to 30% reduction in embodied carbon emissions as compared to concrete construction. Lastly, the applicant has proposed that 100% of the residential parking stalls will be capable of level 2 EV charging. In terms of vehicle and bicycle parking, the proposal includes a total of 593 parking stalls, with 570 for residential purposes, and the remaining 23 shared between commercial and residential visitors. Bicycle parking is accommodated by a total of 1,031 spaces, with 965 being Class 1 long-term bicycle storage and 66 being short-term bicycle storage. All 4 bylaws are recommended for introduction, and the rezoning bylaw is recommended for referral to public hearing. That concludes my presentation on this application, and the representatives from the applicant team are available this evening to answer any specific questions from council. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Zhang. Okay, council, I'm going to make a motion here that we take option 3 on page 313, which is to defeat the bylaws at first reading.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Just my comments. I think there's a lot of good in this proposal. I could probably get behind 3 of the areas, possibly 4. I have a problem with the 12-story tower option. I've been very open with this developer from the very beginning, very early stages on this one, saying that I didn't think tower format was appropriate for the Maplewood area. The last council did pass the Maplewood plan anticipating the level of density that's on this site, but it did say that the council would have to consider on a case-by-case basis whether additional height would be allowed. And my view is that I'm not going to be supportive of additional height in this instance, which leaves me with very few choices. There's no question I applaud the developer for trying to really go above and beyond on the support for the current residential tenants. I do think that that is a really great program that he's proposed for that, and I do want to see the transit initiatives expanded into this area. I just have made commitments that I'm not going to be supportive of a tower format in this area. I have told the developer for years now that I'm not going to be supportive of tower development, and I'm not going to change my view on that in this instance. The other issue I have generally is that 2.5 FSR is the maximum that you could build on this site. And I think that over 500 is a little too much for this area. I'd like to see it trimmed down a little bit, particularly possibly on the Riverside side of the project. But I also think that this area is needs to have a significant commitment to accessible units in it, which I get could be achieved at a later stage in the process, but I want to see a commitment to it at the front end. I want to talk about the process a little bit. And so this council has created what's called an early input opportunity. And this is something that we've used on several larger scale projects in the community with, I'd say, a great deal of success. This is where, before we get to first reading, the council has an opportunity to discuss a project and to point out areas that they're going to have a challenge putting the matter forward at first reading. And it creates an opportunity for a developer to make some adjustments in order to be able to get the matter supportable and out into the public for the public hearing process. And this developer has decided not to do that. You don't have to do that, but otherwise you learn at first reading what the problems to the project are. And so I highly encourage all developers with complex projects in our community to take advantage of the early input opportunity. I think you'll see in the many cases in our community that took advantage of that you've seen the council make reasonable modifications to a proposal in the public's interest, and we've seen projects advance forward. So I have to recommend that to all developers going forward with the district, is that that early input opportunity is a great way to make sure that that a project is really responding to the issues in the community. Regrettably, this is the situation I have to be in on this project. I'm not supportive of the tower format in Maplewood for this purpose. And so I will be supporting rejection at first reading for this item. Councillor Murray, you're the seconder on the matter. Your comment?
Thank you, Mayor Little. I concur with your comments, and really the envisioning of a tower at 12 stories in this community is nothing that the community will support. Currently, we have 1,000 parking stalls that have yet to be completed or even begun east of the Seymour. And with this project, we would be adding another 600 and then an additional 600 plus on development applications that are preliminary in nature at this time. Currently, the Seymour continues to experience gridlock on a regular basis. We know from engineering that the interchange at Mountain Highway has about 5 years before it fails. And engineering's concern, and I sometimes feel like engineering and planning need to be able to look beyond just the within our borders, but look at what happens to that larger provincial infrastructure, because the concern on Main Street and Dollarton is significant in regards to accessing the Second Narrows bridge. Even now, it is backed up well into the Maplewood community. The idea that the current residents will be able to afford non-market really concerns me. Those units are not non-market. Those units are below market because of the age. And I'll go back to Paula Huber, one of our noted planners who now works for the City of Vancouver. One of the last things she said to me before she moved to the City of Vancouver was, she said, "Lisa, the only housing that is ever going to be affordable is older housing." And she was right. And sadly, we continue to tear it down and displace residents. So, that is completely unaffordable. Again, really disappointed in the original, as Mr. Koss pointed out, the light industrial land was going to be protected under the original iteration, and now it's changed to commercial. The erosion of industrial land in the region is a huge concern, and it's really you know, my position on Metro Vancouver board is seeing municipalities take forested land and turn it into residential land, and then take industrial land and turn it into, or forested land into industrial land into residential, and so on. It's just sort of this wheel that we're on. You know, instead of looking at densifying existing industrial land, instead of looking at, you know, area of protecting what's left of our forested urban canopy, and trying to also wait until existing developments are actually built out. I mean, we have two major projects in the Seymour, one on Old Dollarton that was zoned over 6 years ago. It still has not broken ground. I believe they're looking at their development permits right now, or their building permits. And then we've got Anthem that has just started to, you know, clear the land. And then two other projects that are coming to conclusion. We don't even understand the impact of those build outs. And yet we're adding more and more to an area that is going to have significant development pressures in the future. It is the playground to the region, certainly Vancouver and Burnaby and the North Shore. We have a ski hill, a mountain that is used 365 days a year. And we have the village of Deep Cove that on its own attracts thousands and thousands of people, and two roads in and out. That's it. Onto a bridge that has been over capacity for 10 years. Like, the infrastructure cannot handle any more density in this area. And I think if council chooses to go forward, there will be a significant uprising in the Seymour on this application, because already the infrastructure has failed us.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Murray. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will be voting in the same way as Mayor Little and Councillor Murray. I would, however, like to thank the applicant for their comments and all their hard work to get us to this point, staff for the presentation, and Mayor Little and Councillor Murray for their comments. At the very commencement of my remarks, I'd like to make a disclosure with respect to campaign finance. In the 2021 federal election, in which I was a candidate, Oliver Webb, the principal of Darwin Properties, made a generous donation to my federal election campaign. I am extremely grateful. I'm grateful for his support of myself and also his support of the democratic process more broadly. I do not believe this creates a conflict for me, because it involves a different order of government and different issues. However, for reasons of transparency, I did want to disclose that relationship. As to this rezoning, it seeks to allow for the development of 553 residential units, 67% market, 33% rental, divided between market rental and non-market rental. It envisions 593 parking spaces. In the 2018 election, I made a promise to vote for rental, social, supportive, and affordable housing, and against market housing. I also promised to be sensitive to the capacity of transportation infrastructure when considering densification. As such, I cannot, given these promises, support this project at this time. There's too much market housing and too many parking spaces. Were the unit mix rebalanced such that a majority of the proposed units were rental or affordable, I would need to consider the matter further. I do note, however, that I have concerns about this level of height in that area. As for transportation in the area, Seymour and the accesses to the ironworkers are suffering significant congestion. The solutions, and there will be solutions, such as rapid transit, are not imminent. Current upgrades to Highway 1 and the interchanges are not necessarily solving the problem, and as noted by Councillor Murray, even any solutions offered are anticipated to become obsolete within a short number of years. Other developments already approved, and in some cases even beyond our jurisdiction, will continue to place additional load on this transportation network. Councillor Murray provide more details on that. For these reasons, I cannot supporting adding 374 units, approximately 1,000 souls of people living there, all with 593 parking spaces at this time. Even if I would welcome the market rental and the non-market rental, which is part and parcel of the proposal, in which we've heard referenced by speakers earlier in the evening. I don't wish my comments, however, to be taken as any broader criticism of the development or the planning process involved, which I know has been thorough and attentive to what is perceived to be the needs of the community. In the future, I hope we will see meaningful transportation improvements in the area, and I hope we will see projects which are focused on correcting the imbalance in our housing mix, which mean prioritizing rental, social, and affordable over market condos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. I see no further speakers at this time. I'll call, Councillor Forbes, your comments?
There's not much that I can add to what you said, Mayor or Councillor Hanson. I too have a problem with the 12 stories. I do commend the developer for trying to put in the wood structure, though. I'd like to see that in the district somewhere at some time. But again, this goes back to the same things I just finished saying on the Riverside development. The infrastructure isn't there. The only 2 destinations out for people from the Seymour area, and mostly being market. And my concern also that the rents have been frozen for 5 years. So when you've frozen rents for 5 years, I don't know how many of those tenants actually will be able to afford to move into the new building. And also those who choose not to, I'm unclear about if there's any compensation to them. But in general, I agree with what the previous statements that have been made, and I won't be voting for this. Thank you.
Councillor Forbes. Next speaker is Councillor Kern.
Thanks. I guess I just wanted to reflect. I will not be supporting your motion, Mayor Little. We have heard from several people who live in Maplewood Gardens, and I would welcome the opportunity to hear from more. Today I was observing in Parkgate. There's a 10-story building across the way, and people were walking in and out from Parkgate who had gone to the store. And I just want to reflect on this, or sort of name this tension that we have between building this future that could be very, very different than the way that we live now, and so better in so many ways, healthier, quieter, and to sort of sit here and discuss transportation as if we're going to build more roads and we're going to solve, we're not. Collectively, we have to work together to change the way that we move and the way that we live. And it does require transformation, and it is unprecedented, and we don't always have all the answers. But I do feel like young folks in particular are really feeling left behind by the decisions that we're making. And I feel like I have benefited being older from so many things that don't exist anymore. And it makes me sad. And I want, every time we sit at this table, or in this case at a chair, we have choices. We have to make choices. And good intentions do not lead to the outcomes that we have envisioned to be this community that we can be by 2030. And I do feel like we went through an extensive process with our official community plan review. Staff identified some targeted action items. This aligns with many of those items. And so as someone who's been working on climate justice for many years, it's not just about the policies, it's about implementing the policies. And I don't think we're having the right conversation if we're listening to the same concerns expressed, which are valid concerns. I'm not minimizing the concerns that it's difficult to move, but it's difficult to move for everyone. And we have to rethink these systems. And as policymakers, that is our job to do that. So I look forward to seeing what we could do to move this along. I think that there are people in our community and that would like to be part of our community that do see a lot of benefit in this. And we are, as I mentioned previously, we have these intersecting crises, and these are complex decisions. And it can't be distilled down to parking spaces. These are about people's lives. And I think that we have become a society that is too quick to dehumanize. And I have been guilty of that binary thinking. But I'm just asking us to be better. We have to be better. We do. We have to listen to different voices, and we have to do better. And we have to change. And it's not just about me changing or you changing. It's about all of us collectively changing to build a better society for everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Kern. Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't be supporting the motion on the floor. Yeah, I've got lots of different thoughts, but and some specific concerns about this particular proposal. But I think on the whole, it was worthy of sending to the next stage of hearing from the public in a more formal way. Right now, what I'm hearing from the public is a lot of the exact same concerns that we were hearing at the last municipal election in 2018. The same types of emails are coming in, and not that those aren't legitimate concerns. To Councillor Curran's comments, they are. And if it's something that you feel and are concerned about, I acknowledge that it's a real thing. But I think we're not talking about solutions enough. We often are good at defining the problem and pointing out what isn't going to work. But I think we need to start to find a better way to talk about the future of what our community could look like. Again, to kind of along the lines of how Councillor Curran approached this issue. We can talk about the same old things like traffic congestion, but the data, it shows that traffic congestion is largely from people that are coming over to work here in our community every day and then line up and be that congestion in the afternoon. And that's just one aspect of it. But I think as we look to the future, the community is going to look different, and so we have to be prepared to define what we're prepared to accept and talk about solutions. I think to again just kind of look at these projects one off and look at a proponent in this case who spent years, 5 years I think was stated, in considering what this potential project would look like. They've tried to read what this council is asking for, and I think they've come forward with something that is a thoughtful mixed use type of community that would add vibrancy, would add homes and housing diversity, and a lot of the things that this particular area needs. These are older homes that are currently there now, reaching the end of their life. And so I think there's some really interesting things in this proposal that, again, a lot of work has gone in to get to this point. So I can understand, the concerns that we're hearing from the community, but I really think we need to start talking more about solutions and start to frame this in a more positive light that's welcoming new residents to our community, not just lamenting on what we've lost as a community. So I'm really excited to get to that point. I don't know how, we can do that, but, I want to hear, more constructive conversations. Thank you.
Councillor Back, Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and like Councillor Hanson, I would like to acknowledge in the interest of transparency that during the 2018 election, the Building Bridges Elector Society, which endorsed my campaign, received a contribution from Principal of Darwin Construction, Oliver Webb, which about $200 was directly attributed to the expenses for my election campaign. And to the best of my knowledge, I did not receive any campaign contributions from any other directors, officers, or employees of Darwin or of the family members there above. I do have some questions for the applicant. I understand that Quadreal is one of the owners of the property, and Darwin Construction seems to be their development partner. I'm wondering what business is Quadreal in? I'm wondering if the applicant may be willing to address that comment. What's the primary business?
I believe it's largely a pension fund that runs Quadreal, but we're at first, so we can ask the question, right? So just, I don't know if someone from the applicant team can describe the role of Quadrille, but I believe it's largely a pension investment fund. So probably doesn't cover it adequately. Apologies.
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. My name is David Ropel. I'm Vice President of Development at Quadrille. Quadrille is the real estate arm of BCI, BC Investments, Inc., which manages all the public sector pensions of province of BC. So we're the real estate arm of province of BC, the province of BC's pension funds.
Thank you. Councillor Bond, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Since Quadrille's and you mentioned that you're the director of, or in the real estate development arm, does Quadrille also hold long-term rental properties as part of their investment portfolio?
Mr. Mayor, to answer the council's question, yes, we do. That's the core of our business, is long-term hold of purpose-built rental housing.
And has Quadrille ever had situations where they have purchased a rental building in the past and not and proceeded for redevelopment of that rental building and then not been successful in that redevelopment proposal?
Mr. Mayor, to answer the question, not that I believe. If you're asking, have we attempted to relocate an existing rental building and not been successful? Not to my knowledge, Mr. Mayor.
I like to ask these questions because I know that council's decisions one way or another have an outcome, and the concern for the existing tenants in the existing old market building where rents have been frozen since 2016. Should council deny the application, I would like to know whether Quadrille and the applicant are then going to spend another 4 or 5 years trying to find another application, whether they might be interested in selling the building or renovating the units, because I think it's really important to take into consideration that there are 58 households living in this building right now, and council saying no to development proposal does not mean that those people will continue to exist or continue to live in the same condition that they're living right now. So should this proposal be rejected at this point, and I'm probably putting you on the spot, but what are potential long-term plans for this site that is owned by Quadrille?
Hold on just a moment. So it's a peculiar question in that asking about a potential future outcome that we haven't even given the decision yet, and still it's a peculiar question in that regard. I don't know that it's going to give you a reliable answer on what's going to happen, since I know that the president of Darwin is not, the owner of Darwin, apologies, the owner of Darwin is not present, and so they'd probably have to go back and talk to their reps together and decide what to do at that point. But it's just that it's not a reliable, I mean, I don't know if it's something you've considered, and if you have a comment on it, but the problem is using it to influence the process. I don't know how entirely comfortable I am with that, but if it's a scenario you've considered and you have a plan, then
yeah, I'll take a slightly different stab at the answer that might provide a little more clarity, and I'm not trying to put words for the mayor to Councillor Bond. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth on what it was you were getting at, but I'll answer it this way. The status quo is not an option for this property should it not proceed under the development scheme that we proposed, or one similar to it. It has been maintained with the rents and physically in a way that is not sustainable and is very much in tune with a development in mind. And to think that it would continue in its current state is false thinking. It would require significant upgrades were it to remain intact, such that the existing residents would not, in all likelihood, be able to remain in situ during such renovations, which would then in turn result in significant increases in rent to pay for those renovations. So I don't know if that's indirectly answering your question, but development proposal on the site would be required in some way or another, even if that was a substantial renovation. And I don't know if it's appropriate at this point in time to suggest that, you know, perhaps council could seek for us to explore a reduction of the height if that is indeed the primary issue that's being taken, that's being raised. We would be happy to do that, to explore a reduction of the 12-story component. But yeah, I mean, short of some redevelopment or another, that the property will not remain as it is today.
Thank you very much. I hope that answers your question. I'm not trying to paint you in the box.
I think so. You know, I think in generally, council is considering a lot of potential future impacts, the potential for 600 people or 600 cars to be at this site, the potential for the residents that live at this site to, or could live at this site, to drive them in a way that perhaps most of council is used to driving a car frequently, often, and everywhere. You know, we do consider potential impacts a lot when we're thinking about this decision, the potential impact of a 12-story building versus a lower building. And I think that when making a decision such as this, we should be aware of the potential impacts of our decision to reject this application at this time on the existing site. And I think it's important to point out that that does not mean status quo generally, especially on sites like this. So I won't add more to that. I just echo the comments of Councillor Curran and Councillor Back. We do need to think a lot more forward-thinkingly about the future that we do want to create here in the District of North Vancouver. And I had seen, at least by this proposal, that there were a lot of items in there that were very worthy of our consideration and worthy in this neighborhood.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. The next speaker I have is Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of points. There was some comment about the fact that the parking spaces was receiving too much attention from us. And I guess from my point of view, the significance of the parking spaces is that they're likely to be occupied by cars that will come to and from those spaces, and that in so doing will add to the transportation demand on the road system. And we've heard so much at this council about how the road system is overtaxed, it's reaching tipping points, and that once these tipping points are reached, they congest, and this isn't good for our society. It's not good for our economy, and it's not good for our environment to have 600 cars sitting stationary in traffic, spewing out exhaust. That isn't a green vision. So that's why I focus on the parking spaces. It's because they're associated with cars that, as I say, come to and fro. And I don't mean to sound in any way disrespectful in saying that. I just think that's really a hard fact that we can't ignore. Also, this issue of what causes the transportation demand, and is it people coming to the North Shore to work, or is it going from the North Shore to work elsewhere? And I would suggest that the Seymour traffic dynamic is somewhat distinct, or it has to be analyzed on its own terms, because in Seymour there's an awful lot of people leaving Seymour in the mornings for downtown in particular, but elsewhere in the Lower Mainland, and coming back in the evenings in Seymour. And there's an awful lot of congestion and dysfunction of the road system as you leave Seymour and try and get on the ironworkers. And anyway, an extra 600 cars isn't going to help that, put it simply. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson. The next speaker I have is Councillor Murray.
I just have to comment on Councillor Bond's questioning. And if we are concerned about anything, it should be that somehow a community plan can commit a rezoning application to go forward, which it cannot. I heard one of the speakers say there was a promise for development in this area. There were no promises made, none. An OCP and rezoning is on a case-by-case basis. It is not a right to have something rezoned. It is a privilege. And you come forward with an application to request rezoning and to be able to accommodate the community and to be able to deal with the issues of the community. The idea that if we don't give this rezoning, these people will be displaced because it's just not going to work, that the units remain until something better is brought forward, is something I have never, ever heard in over 30 years of being a local activist and 25 as a councillor. And I find it very, very disturbing that that is what we're talking about. You know, I understand the speculation in land in this region is out of control, The tens of millions and millions of dollars that have been paid to acquire surrounding property in this area would blow your mind, because of the speculation and the need to build and build and build to bring in that bottom line. And if, you know, Councillor Kern, you were emotional earlier about people. Be emotional about the fact that we are pushing people out of our community to be able to bring other people in, other people that can afford more, other people that are not living in units like this. These people have actually lived here for decades, just like Emery and Mountain Court. They were the backbone of our community. They had businesses and they raised their children and worked in our community. And they were pushed out because their units and their buildings were just old and never looked after. Europe would just laugh. I will leave you this is my last comment, Mayor Little, I'm sorry. But the fact that we think 40-year-old buildings are old is such, it's amazing to me. All of Europe would just laugh at us. We just don't look after them. We let them run into the ground and we let them dilapidate, and then we go, oh, we can't look after the people anymore. We'll push them away. That's what is disgusting about this conversation.
You're over time, but thank you very much for your comments. The next speaker is Councillor Curran.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess what I'm looking for are alternatives then. If not this, then what? Because we do oftentimes talk about the problems and we don't enough talk about practical, implementable solutions. And I'm not here to say that this had every box checked off or anything. I think everything, there's opportunities to improve it. But I think that we need to really focus on, building the future. And I personally, in the work that I do every day, have to believe in a different future, because doing what we're doing now, the outcomes are, I can see what the outcomes are of not changing the system that we're in. And it's unimaginable and it's unconscionable. And so this system change that's required is going to be challenging. But there are solutions, and some of them are within our ability to do at the local level. Some of them need to be done collectively. And I think that it's an ongoing challenge. But when we talk about, we can't just talk about what we're not going to do. We have to talk about what we are going to do, because inaction is taking action. It has an impact. And I think it also, we need to do a much better job of who we're listening to, because the folks that are in that building, some of them have spoken about how they would like to have a newer home. Maybe those units, I don't know the condition of those units. I know people who lived in them for many, many years and they were well cared for. But the reality is in this system that we're in, they will be redeveloped, and it is our responsibility to look after them. And this particular proposal presented a solution that is unique, and one that I thought we needed to hear more about. But I look forward to the solutions as well. We can't just go round and round talking about the problems. Many of the things that we face are symptoms of systems that we as policymakers do have the ability to change.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. Councillor Forbes, your remarks.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm shaking right now because I'm astounded at some of the comments that have been made by councillors at this table tonight. I'll make some points. But first of all, I also wanted to correct, I said I would not be in favor, and I meant I would be in favor of your motion, Mayor. So having corrected that, my first comment is, Councillor Bond, if you received a donation from Darwin, you should step away from any decision on this. My second comment is, I'm astounded that you bring forward your comparison. I'm astounded at the scare tactic that has been.
I really appreciate your comments on the proposal before us. Turning it into a person-to-person fight is not going to assist anyone. So I'd prefer if you would use your remaining time to talk about the proposal before us.
I will do that, but I have to reference what other people have also said. Let me see, I'm looking. There is a whole segment that has grown up or built or moved in years ago to the North Shore. And I'm concerned, my concern is not only for people who may want to come here, but my very first concern is for the people who are already here. I lost my children not living in North Vancouver because it was too expensive for them. So I know what it's like to have people be forced out. My grandchildren won't live anywhere near me. My sons don't live anywhere near me. So I totally understand that. When Councillor Curran says, or a councillor says, if not this, then what? Well, how about more affordable units tied to income? How about more rental in perpetuity? How about 4 or 5 story buildings? There's lots of things that we have, as this council, have endorsed, and we could go forward with endorsing, but not this particular development as it's proposed.
Your comments to
Yes, I just would also like to say when a comment is made that we have to do a better job of who we are listening to. No, all of us have to do a better job of listening to everybody, not certain interests.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Forbes. Council, we've exhausted the speaking list on this matter, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? The matter passes with Councillors Curran, Bond, and Back opposed. Thank you very much, Council. Okay, the next item is item 811. And okay, so this is utilizing district-owned lands for rental, social, and affordable housing. We've had a report on this matter, but do we have any more staff comment at this time?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. We do have a few slides we could run through at Council's pleasure to give a short overview if that's what's desired tonight.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to ask M.A. Lee to pull up the slides. They're really just 7 slides to give everybody who's listening today some orientation. Thank you very much, M.A. I'm hoping that everybody can see that fine.
Thank you.
Yep. Great. Thanks so much. I'm not sure if you need the words there or if you can see those, but I'm just going to start right in the interest of time. Good evening again, Your Worship, and members of council and staff and community members who are here today. It was in late 2020 when council directed that staff prepare scenarios to look at rental, social, and affordable housing on specified lands owned by the district. These scenarios were then to be taken to the public for consultation and feedback from the community. And council, with your previous directions, we've seen new social and supportive housing on municipal land being approved. I'm thinking specifically of the Delbrook lands, West 16th, and Sanford. Tonight, we're providing information on 5 other potential sites, and exploring affordable housing on our land can help us respond to the affordable housing crisis before us. Thanks, Emmy, that slide. You get a little bit of a heads up with what I'm going to say with seeing the words, but I'm sure you're not minding that. These are the sites that council directed us to take a look at. We did group them into 5 clusters, really for ease of study and based on their location. And the groupings are shown here. So number 1 is Saint Denis. I'm just gotta make it bigger on my screen because my eyes are not so good. You can see over, I'll get MA to point that out, on the far west side, Saint Denis, the fire training site. Number 2, Mountain Highway and Hunter Street in Lynn Creek. Number 3, we've grouped together, thanks MA, for the Lillooet Road sites on the west side and on the east side. 4th, number of parcels owned by the district in Maplewood. And 5th, finally, Burr Place. And we didn't look at the Riverside site, the 4 district-owned lots on Riverside Drive, as they were subject to a separate review, which we heard earlier on the agenda today. So we'll go to the next slide, please. How did we develop this work a little bit further? Well, we pulled together staff with different expertises from different departments: real estate, engineering, transportation. We look carefully at the sites, what's around them, what's on there right now, where is it, what's the topography like, what do our current plans say about these areas, and any other specific challenges that might be encountered. Next, we developed 2 scenarios for each of the sites, and I'll go over those a little bit more in a moment. And depending on council's direction, the public engagement part is where we would take the scenarios out broadly to the community to hear their thoughts. And I know what council had said to us is that we want to make sure that the use of public land is discussed in a public forum and in a comprehensive way as desired by council. The scenarios, just before the scenarios, there's a booklet attached to the report. It's attachment 1. It's 12 pages. It starts on page 653. That is a massive agenda today. We also wanted to put some of the, I have in our frame of mind similar images of what these different forms of housing are. So we look at townhouses, low rise, which should be 4 to 6 stories, or 7 to 11 stories, and then a high rise form as well. And you can see in this image that some building forms, obviously by their size, could result in more rental, social, affordable housing. But we know that the context and the fit for the neighborhood is really essential, and this is where we also want to get more feedback in. Next slide, just a couple more left. So here are the 2 scenarios that are described in the booklet: a base scenario and a bonus scenario. The base scenario is the lower density scenario, really based on existing designations in our official community plan and plans, town center plans. And then the bonus scenario is a higher density alternative. What could a development on the site look like with additional height, for example, up to 2 stories? So just a couple examples that you'll see when you look, we'll have seen in the booklets provided in attachment 1. And the next steps, in the next slide, we will need to do some more diligence. This was a somewhat high level review, building on the work actually done earlier in the summer with council's direction to look at sites for Metro Vancouver housing. So that set the stage for this. Public engagement on the scenarios, early 2022. We suspect that this would be a hybrid of approaches with, clearly some online work and webinars and a survey, but in collaboration with our communications team, we're hoping that we will be able to do some in-person events, maybe some pop-up events as well. We want to be able to reach people who are young adults, youth, lower income households as well, in line with the social equity considerations that we're aiming for and that are set out in our OCP action plan and our work for inclusive communities. That feedback from the community would come back to council along with recommendations on next steps. We anticipate that there'll be the need for more information on uses and densities on these sites. The last slide are the recommendations for council today. That is to receive this report for information and that staff be directed to start engagement on these conceptual scenarios and return the results to council for consideration. Thank you so much. And thank you, Emma, for running the slides.
Thank you very much. I have a motion, which is the first paragraph is the same as the staff recommendation that the November 24th, 2021 report of the community planner entitled Utilizing District-Owned Lands for Rental, Social, and Affordable Housing is received for information, that part. But also on the second paragraph, I have a slight change, a substantive change, and that staff initiate engagement on the conceptual development scenarios of 900 St. Denis Avenue and Mountain Highway / Hunter Street by spring of 2022 and return the results to council for consideration. Is there a seconder on?
Second.
Councillor Murray. So just my comments on the matter. I mean, what we're looking for is a really to focus on what we can achieve in the short run on this, and the partners that we're looking for will most likely only be able to deliver 1 or 2 projects per year. And so putting 5 projects forward, I think muddies the field a little too much. We know these projects are coming. We know the timeline on these properties. We have all said, including Councillor Murray's comments in the last item, that we want to see a significant social and affordable housing project in the reuse of the fire properties. And I think that's a laudable goal that aligns very well with our OCP and our local area plans in the area. And I support us proactively zoning these properties for these purposes, and so that we clear the way for future partnerships with deep dive social and affordable housing projects, and are able to create really great housing options in the community. But again, the properties that are listed, some of them have really great potential, others not so much. These 2, I think I can say with some confidence, we can find viable solutions for these properties moving forward. So we should be highlighting these 2 in particular at this time. Councillor Murray, is a seconder your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. I absolutely concur. I think we've also been talking, and I heard Ms. Atva talk about, sort of a target audience that we were trying to engage with. And I would certainly like to include, seniors populations. Seniors are not always ready for seniors home or supportive living or assisted living facilities. Seniors are super active, living longer, really healthy, and I think they're really finding it hard to be able to stay in this community as well, because they live in a lot of these older rental places. And I think a lot of them that are in these older rental facilities, because of all of the speculation and buying up of all this property in order to redevelop strata and market, is really instilling some fear in them. And I think there would be such a great opportunity to bring a seniors component and a family component together and create a mix of people instead of a mix of units, because seniors and families can use the same kind of units as Councillor Forbes. She's got grandchildren, and there's all sorts of needs for seniors to have an extra room, whether it be a caregiver or children and family coming to stay. I think that's really important. We have for many years also taught, and I've tried desperately over the years to try to find a spot for Habitat for Humanity. I watch so many municipalities around the region partner. Even the city of North Vancouver is looking at a project, and I just feel awful that we can't find a project. And I think Habitat for Humanity is very flexible in regards at looking outside the box. And if we could take one of these sites and do a whole bunch of different scenarios where we incorporated Habitat for Humanity, we incorporated seniors housing, and subsidize seniors housing, and then that social housing component for young families. I note in the title of this report, it's rental, and I worry that it's market rental and that somehow that is going to subsidize the other forms of housing. I think district land should be used for social housing and people that really need it, and not market rent, because market rent is not affordable for many people. It's very expensive, and especially when the units are new, it's very expensive. And we've got a lot of market rent out there because all of a sudden the development community, sorry, I need to let a dog out. All of a sudden the development community could pivot to market rent. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity here to discuss a lot of things with the community. I do believe, though, that we need to have planning and communications come forward with the communication plans, because I'm sorry, I no longer have faith that we have a good ability to get out to the masses just simply by putting stuff on Facebook or the paper. Like, nobody looks at the paper anymore. They don't read the ads in the paper. We do not do a good job of being able to gather a lot of people from the community to take part in discussions. And so I would like whatever communication plan we have to engage in residents, that it be brought forward to council so we can take a look at it. And hopefully, I'd like to do it in person, at a town hall meeting, an old-fashioned town hall where we invite people and we put it out on all the community pages, and we all show up and take part. And we have a moderator, we have boards up for ideas, and then we have questions and answers. It's always the most successful kind of communication, and it engages a lot of people.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Next speaker I have is Councillor Bond.
Perhaps just a question for clarification. With the motion proposed and seconded, would the remaining sites on the list then not be proceeding at this time and require some future direction of council in order to proceed? Is that correct?
That's my intent.
I won't be supporting that. I think if we think back, this motion and this report is in front of council primarily because of two council reports I put forward and that came forward to council. The first was in November of 2018, where council would look at this type of proposal, all of district lands, and looking at different scenarios in order to provide rental and affordable housing on district lands. That proposal was deferred for 2 years until I brought forward a slightly revised proposal, which is the one a year ago that brought forward this report, and thankfully that one was supported by council. I think if you look over time, and the last application that was defeated at first reading, also the Riverside site, which did pass, the time it takes to get a affordable housing proposal to council, to do the due diligence and the community consultation is years. It is years, 4 years, 5 years, and that's often not taking into account what is available for funding. I think we know right now, provincial funding and federal funding has been coming. That may not be the same in the future. And so I think focusing, well, I do agree, focusing on those two sites, I think those two sites do have the most priority, but I don't think we should abandon the other sites at this time. I think that going forward, the need for affordable housing is not going to be solved by the Riverside site in itself. It's not going to be solved by these two sites by themselves. Can't see my time. I've got 2 minutes left, lots of time. We need to plan out much farther into the future and look at these district lands holistically. And I think that means taking these sites out for early consideration to the community. They are significant changes to what might be in the OCP, and our OCP has 9 years left into it before we probably need a new one. Doing this work on these sites early will lead into a really important and good conversation with our community. I don't see some of these sites developing for 5 to 10 or 15 years, but the work we do now will set up future councils for success when the decision does need to be made about adding more district land to social and affordable housing. So I don't want to see those sites dropped off the table now. I think we need to start the process because it's going to make the next councils and the next council after, it's going to make their job a lot easier if we start that work now.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Next speaker I have is Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much. I will be supporting the motion, and I support the spirit of the motion, which is prioritizing the St. Denis and Mountain Highway sites as being the most readily available for progress in the housing issues that are most urgent. I am sensitive to Councillor Bond's comments about the need to broadly proceed on all of these sites. So although I'm going to be supporting the motion, I wouldn't want that to be interpreted as the others being shelved altogether. It's, I think, more just raising those two sites for priority action with a view to moving along with the others in an expeditious way as well. I wanted to make a couple of comments about the other sites. The Burr Place site, I think we would be well advised to not consider housing for that site. It's very car dependent. This is why I didn't support in the past affordable housing initiatives at that site. I think it would be better to consider medical services and expanding it in the category of medical services that are already being developed in that area. The Lillooet Road site, I think it's important there that we coordinate our efforts with CAPU, and it seems to be the target ought to be student housing at a reasonably high density. With respect to the Maplewood site, I do believe that ultimately to be a long-term could be an excellent site for social and affordable housing, and I would support in the fullness of time high density there with the caveat that it may be that we have to await further transit initiatives before we can really consider the development of that site to its highest and best use as affordable, social, or supportive housing. And I absolutely agree with comments that have been made that when we're talking about district land, we're not talking about rental, market rental. What we're talking about is deep dive affordability for the groups most in need of housing support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Kern.
Thank you. And maybe Mayor Little, you can clarify, because it sounds like Councillor Hanson and Councillor Bond and you, to some extent, support all of looking into all of the spaces, but prioritizing some. And so if that is the intention, which I think is reasonable, but not taking action at all on the other pieces, because that I don't think gets us any closer to our goals, and many of these targets do align with other policies that we've set for ourselves or for the community. So would you be open to changing the wording so that it's not excluding the other units? Because some of the task force recommendations had to do with exploring co-op housing, and I thought this was an opportunity to really talk about different ways, to Councillor Murray's point, seniors housing, accessible housing, like really getting out there with the community to talk about these needs, and then figuring out which locations are best in 5, 10, 15 years from now, based on other changes that may or may not occur, I think makes a lot of sense, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that things take a lot longer than you think. So I wouldn't want to see all that work, and I do believe that was unanimously supported by council for that to move forward. And so I would like to see it proceed, and I'm just wondering if you'd be open to rewording that to not exclude the other properties.
So I just want to be careful about that. I'm not elevating all of them. What I'm trying to do is just elevate those two particular projects. I'm not rejecting the other sites either. I just think there's a very different discussion for the other 4 sites than there are for these 2 sites. You know, it's a little bit like a Venn diagram where you're seeing all of the different council priorities. And I just happen to think that these 2 properties are the ones where we're going to be able to reach consensus. And so that's why I'm trying to set them apart. It's not that I'm trying to reject other sites. I do think we need to have ongoing discussions about the other sites, but in my remaining 2 minutes, I would like to address some of those other issues, but I don't know that if changing the wording, I don't intend to reject the other sites. I'm just trying to say that at this point, we're elevating these two particular sites for the next round of planning. Does that preclude us from elevating the other pieces for some other planning process? Not at all.
Thank you. I think one of the intentions, but Councillor Bond can speak to this because it was his report, but was to give the community an opportunity to see this landscape holistically, and to talk about the different locations and different needs, and really look at it across the municipality, recognizing that we will certainly prioritize certain locations that are in complete communities and that are ready to go. And so I'm excited to hear that there's support for those locations. Maybe staff could comment. Like, I just want to make sure that those other sites don't go away, because I think it would be a lot more helpful for the community to see them all presented, but in a way that we say this council has prioritized these, but these are all public lands. And so I think presenting them all together makes a lot of sense, but maybe staff could comment.
Thank you very much. With Mayor Little's permission, the options before council allow a selection of the sites as has been discussed. It is helpful for staff to have a clearer direction on what the will and preference of council is, so that we can tailor not only the further due diligence that staff would need to do, but also clearly design the engagement process so that we know if we're focusing on one or two or all of the sites. And that's the gist of what I wanted to say. We'll take what the direction is from council. Obviously, the amount of coordination and work to do two sites or all is of course different, but we'll be able to take your direction and create a process with communications. And I appreciate the comments around seniors as well. Clearly, that's our desire as well, and we will work closely with communications on that engagement plan. And
Councillor Kern, the floor is still yours.
I guess I'm going to be honest and say I'm not entirely clear at this point what that outreach to the community is going to look like. I appreciate prioritizing locations that the council seems to support, and I just don't see that precluding the other locations from the more broad discussion. Like, I think that if I were communicating this to the community, I would say we've identified these 5 parcels. 2 of them we're prioritizing based on this criteria, but we also want to hear about the community's thoughts for these other locations, because if it's going to be a long, years long process, and we might as well start that now. It would be great to engage CapU, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish. Like, let's get everyone involved in this conversation and hear the community's ideas for how we can solve some of our challenges on these at these specific locations.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Back.
I can unmute. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Bond, for all of your efforts to get us to this point where we're having this conversation in the public about these sites that we have been aware of as a council now and been looking at since the beginning of the term almost. I tend to think that we should bring all of the sites out for public discussion as well, because it makes it a bigger conversation and we can really look at kind of the whole picture. As much as the fire training center and the old fire hall site are ones that maybe we can find council alignment on right now, they're the ones that are going to be for a longer term project. So I think it'd be good to look at the other sites and kind of see what might be able to happen sooner than that. And I tend to agree that we want to get out to the community. I hear what Councillor Miri has said too about reaching people in different ways. I'm all for we're looking at how we engage and communicate with the community, and it's no longer through just the newspaper. We need to look at all different ways of getting out there. So if we can take all of the sites out, have a bigger conversation, I think it's going to draw more interest potentially and allow us to look across the whole community and see what we can do. So I guess I'm supportive of the motion as well, Your Worship, but I would like us to include all of the sites in our discussions to the community.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in the interest of disclosure, proper disclosure here, Councillor Mary said, I have grandchildren. No, I don't. That's wishful thinking, and I hope I do ASAP if my sons are listening. Having clarified,
no pressure, though.
Having clarified that, the only other thing I would just like to say is when we are doing deep dive type of developments, which I fully support on district lands, because that's the only way we're going to get the kind of supportive and deep dive that we're looking for. I just wanted to say that some of the delay isn't the district's fault, or I won't say fault, but isn't because of the district's process. We have to get partners in that endeavor, and sometimes those partners don't have all their ducks lined up quite as fast as we might. So there are other essentially three partners: an operating partner, a funding partner, and then the DNV. So we all have to get our ducks lined up with each other and then move forward. So that causes some delay. Just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. And I guess we'll just, Councillor Bond, go ahead.
I'm going to take my mask off because it's getting a little bit hot. Councillor Curran kind of reminded me of a lot of the purpose here, and I think it's been stated quite clearly, is to take the lands that we have available out to the community for discussion. And I think that discussion is best had when we look at all the lands at once, because then we can have a fulsome discussion about the different types of land tenure, that have been mentioned in the rental and affordable housing task force, different forms of housing, and see which site fits best. I also think I know a lot of the council right now has talked about deep dive affordability only on district lands. I think the different levels of affordability that can be offered under different models should also be part of the discussion. I think, as we know, deep dive affordability is completely dependent on federal and provincial funding. And should that funding disappear, council might and the community might want to have options where some housing gets delivered instead of none. And so I think the discussion about whether it's market rental, a mix of market and non-market rental, fully non-market rental, or full deep dive affordability with federal and provincial subsidies should also be part of the discussion, because it's really important when you're looking at the outcome. And I think the outcome here that we've set is more homes that are more affordable and more accessible for more people in our community. And so I think that needs to be part of the discussion as well.
Yeah, and I'll just make my last comments here. I don't want my motion to be misinterpreted here. This council has 16 regular meetings left, and then we go into an election. And I got to tell you, that means we've probably got 12 regular meetings where we can be closing off important matters. It's not a lot. It's not a lot of time. And so my effort to set these two apart is to get action on these. If we still have 6 properties and we're talking about a springtime general discussion, and then we lead into the summer where we're trying to wrap up matters, not open up new matters, I just think from looking at this, it's not to cast shade upon the other 4 properties. It really is just to say, this is where I think we can get some action done before the next council comes in. And if the next council starts by having their very first meeting about the 4 remaining properties and finding a direction in the next year, nothing would make me happier. I'm just trying to find something that we would be able to address with this council before this council needs to start wrapping up its affairs before we get to the next election. And I just happen to think the fire sites are really great candidates for that. There are some challenges with some of the other sites. I hesitate to get into those challenges just because I've got 32 seconds left. But, you know, as an example, the Cap U site, that the site below Cap U, that has to be a part of the Cap U master plan, that discussion. It has to have the context of potentially rapid transit being brought onto the North Shore and into that space. So I don't think that the key pieces are in place for us to have the discussion about what the potential of that property could be. And so it's just an example, but I'm trying to set these two pieces apart because I think it's something that this council can take action on and be very proud of the result for. That's my comments. The motion is as it is. I see no further speakers, so I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries, I think it's unanimously. Thank you very much, council. Appreciate your support. And you have my commitment to look at all of those properties going forward. I just wanted to set it apart. Okay, council, that is, we've completed the regular business of the meeting. We do have an opportunity for reports, which is rare these days. We haven't had too many opportunities for reports. First, I'll check with Mr. Stewart. Do you have any reports or updates from the CAO's office?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, and then we'll go to councillors. Any reports that you would like to make at this time? I see Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of updates on recent events. The week before last, there was a series of events to open the brand new North Vancouver Museum, Manova. We had, as I say, basically a week-long series of events. And I'm sorry that many of you weren't able to attend, but I do hope that sometime over the holidays, if you can find some time, you'll get down and take a look. It really is great to finally have the doors open, and with the whole retail area there's some great Christmas present ideas. So do go and check it out. And I also wanted to update on the chamber activities. As the council rep on the North Van Chamber, the North Van Chamber had their first in-person event last Thursday, and it was really nice to see a number of people there. It was down at the shipyards, and again, just nice to be in person again. So those are my updates. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Curran, your comments, your reports.
I just wanted to report on a meeting that I attended with some other climate leaders, local climate leaders, with Minister Heyman. And we're really trying to advocate for the support that we need. We know that we need all orders of governance to work together to actually implement Clean BC. And just to put in context, the heavy lifting on that program is for municipalities to retrofit. And so we really need to ramp up on retrofits. And so anyway, we went and tried to get us more money to implement active transportation and retrofits, and to get more support, because it's not something that anyone can do alone, but just trying to emphasize the speed and scale that we need to move. And I think that's an important piece of what we can do as well in our position. So.
Thank you, Councillor Kern. Councillor Hanson, your reports.
Thank you very much. Pleased to report that a week ago Saturday, I attended the grand opening. Had been delayed by a year, but the grand opening of Muse Cannabis in Dollarton, and it was a very interesting event. I had a full tour of the premises and the facilities, and apparently there's been no public safety issues or public commotion or public disturbance in the area. The store seemed to be well attended, and I felt proud that we had contributed to completing our community and adding services that were obviously valued by that community. And that was a feel-good event. Can also say, and I attended along with the mayor of the policing committee, where we met Superintendent Yee and received a presentation from him. And I look forward to Superintendent Yee, who is our new superintendent for the last 2 or 3 months, reporting out to this council coming and introducing himself to us. I thought he made a very impressive presentation. Obviously takes public safety in North Vancouver very seriously, and I look forward to both the community and this council getting to know Superintendent Yee better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murray, your reports?
Well, no, I was just going to ask, do we have a date where our new superintendent will be coming to present in front of council? We have yet to formally have him in front of us. And I hope in the new year, maybe we can take down those boxes in the chamber and try to return to some level of what we used to be able to do. But it would be nice for us to all be there and have a presentation from him.
I agree, and I will work with the Superintendent OIC's office to set up a time early in the new year to hear the new superintendent's priorities for the RCMP. Okay, then I'll just make some of my own reports, I guess. You know, it was really great to start out the holiday season with the Winter Lights Festival at Parkgate. The Parkgate Community Association had a probably 200 people out plus over the course of the night, all spread out and people with masks and everything, but it was a fantastic event. Arts and crafts, music, kids choir. I had a really great time there. Also had a fantastic dinner opportunity with the TWN Nation, where our two councils were able to get together and talk about the issues that are most important to our community. Very glad to do that. I was also able to participate in the North Vancouver District Public Library Board's Christmas or year-end dinner and hear about how challenging a year it's been for library services, both recovering out of COVID, but also obviously being a key part of the recovery for that group of businesses when we had that stabbing attack back in March. And how it's deeply affected the library in our area. And I'm just, you know, again, reiterating our support for our library going forward. It's played such a key role in supporting both the patrons and the other businesses in that space, and I'm glad we're there. Also had the pleasure of a phone call and meeting, Zoom meeting with our former mayor, Richard Walton. Many of you may not know, but Richard Walton serves as the e-com director on behalf of the North Shore municipalities, including Lions Bay, West Vancouver, City of North Vancouver, and District. And that means that when they have their meetings, he is on the board as our rep and also performs functions for us at their annual general meeting. And so this was an update opportunity for us to hear about how we can use e-com's policies to better be prepared for instances that like we had this last summer. We had the heat dome incident, which resulted in a normal summertime week of calls would be about 1,400 people. And during the heat dome, the calls went up to over 2,100 people. So 50% increase in the number of calls during that time. And it certainly caused us to have to revisit how we prioritize our resources and make sure that the e-com service is responsive to these unprecedented, but I have to say, predictive events. I really do think that as we go through the baby boomers aging and potential climate change impacts in our community, it's critically important to have a nimble emergency communication system that can respond, and really just have to go over some strategies to get more resources their way, because it's critically important for our communities. And that's it for reports. Sorry, Councillor Muir, you had another report?
Well, no, you just, I think it would be interesting to be able to have a presentation in regards to, you know, some of the challenges in regards to resources. Certainly during that heat dome, the number of calls through e-com was significant, but the ability to be able to respond to those calls was very, very challenging. And I think as we move forward with increased climate disaster, you know, the flooding, the heat domes, potential forest fires in more of an urban setting, I think we really need to have more discussions with our community about emergency preparedness, emergency response, and how we're going to deal with all of that. Currently, we're looking at, you know, some changes within NACIMO. I sit on that committee, and But I think it really is at the beginning of the year, Mr. Stewart. I think it would be helpful if council did have a presentation in regards to our emergency capabilities, where we are with our plans, and what the community needs to know and understand going forward.
Thank you. And I agree, and we have actually already started discussions with the head of ECOM, the executive director of ECOM, and the chair of the board, Doug, to have a presentation on the North Shore. They do acknowledge the unique acuteness of the problem on the North Shore, but also they are facing those pressures throughout the Lower Mainland. But we're the ones, it seems, that cannot get enough BC ambulance resources to be able to respond in those critical incidences, and so we need their attention. But I agree, and would love to be able to have a public presentation from ECOM about those challenges, because we need more public advocacy around emergency response. So Council, I see no further reports, so I did just want to close off today by recognizing this is our last regular public meeting of the Council before the year end and before the holidays. And I wanted to wish all members of the public, our staff, our Council, everybody that comes out and supports our Council meetings and provides their opinions and engages. I just want to express my deep appreciation for what you bring to our community, and also pass on to you and your families happy holidays and very Merry Christmas to all of you. I wish you all the best in the holiday season. I hope you have a little bit of snow, but not too much snow, and are able to get together with family and just have a fantastic time together. But on behalf of the Council, I want to thank you all for your participation. Have a fantastic evening.
Merry Christmas.
And everyone.
Christmas.
Thank you.